What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. So there's been a few minor changes to the podcast and one major change to the podcast. And the major change to the podcast is going to be that I've actually changed the name of the podcast, guys. I changed it from GLTV Radio to Listen to LambChop. And I know that's more like silly, but that was the idea behind it. It's supposed to be silly, fun, inviting, not so set in stone to like, I don't even know how to say it. Like it sounds, GLTV Radio sounds too official. Like, it sounds like that's what you're tuning into. Like, thank you for tuning in to GLTV Radio on 103.7. And today we're going to talk about politics. Like, that's not what this podcast is, guys. It's more fun than that. We got a banger podcast today, and it's going to be super fun. But the reason I changed it to Listen to LambChop, besides the fact that I thought it would be more fun and inviting, is also the fact that it's a nickname of mine. LambChop was a nickname that my buddy Daniel Mathis back in high school, he nicknamed me LambChop. Because I had like thick sideburns and a goatee, and we were all on the football team, so some of the other guys on the team started calling me LambChops too, and it just kind of stuck. So I figured I would just go with the nickname and embrace it, and go ahead and name the podcast officially Listen to LambChop. So, guys, welcome to the very first episode of Listen to LambChop. GLTV Radio is in the past, and it's it's the same channel. So I mean, it's the same content coming out. We're gonna do some really fun things on this channel, and it's gonna be fun, guys. But I just wanted to give you a little insight as to why I decided to change the name. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into today's topic and everything, all the goodness inside of today's podcast. So, welcome to the very first official Listen to LambChop podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Lamb, and today I have a guest with me. His name is Cody Spence. If you watch any of Gavin Lamb TV on YouTube, then you've probably seen Cody. You've seen us do some fun stuff. You've seen us do some stupid stuff. But it's all for the love of fun, guys. So please go to the channel. Go to Gavin Lamb TV on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Like the videos. Comment. Give us some feedback so we know what you want to see in the future. But I literally wouldn't be able to do the YouTube channel or the podcast without Cody. He's been with me from the very beginning of this journey. So everyone just please give a warm welcome to Cody Spence.
Hey, how you doing?
Thanks for being here, man. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to try to make Cody more of a regular guest for the podcast. So it's going to be...
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a while. The last podcast we did together was the actual first official podcast that I ever put up, which was basically a story review of... It was direct aftermath of the Pocky One Chip Challenge.
Yeah.
2020's Pocky One Chip Challenge. So that was fun.
Yeah, but I mean... The podcast was fun.
Yeah, the podcast was fun. The challenge was it's not called a challenge for nothing, right? It was wild, but that one has the most views, and I found out it's not because it's been up the longest that it has the most views or the most listens.
That was a good first podcast.
Yeah, it was a good first podcast, but because it was I think it's because it was so organic. It was so natural, like we didn't know what we were doing. We just hit record, we started talking, and we started telling people about our experience.
That we just experienced, which I feel helped a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was fresh on the mind. We had to tell someone, so we decided to tell the listeners first. And I think kind of like, I don't know, man, my other podcast after that were good. I'm not going to discredit any of those podcasts. Some of them were absolutely phenomenal. I just feel like I had too much of... an idea in my head as to what I wanted the episode to look like ahead of time, and expectations and too much structure. It's good to have notes, and it's good to stay on track with what's going on in the conversation and everything. But it was almost like I was trying to read off of a script as opposed to having an organic conversation with the guest. You know, I was trying to stay on track, stay on time, and have everything. I was trying to make everything mesh together on its own, and I didn't like where that was heading. So that's also kind of like some of the minor changes I'm making about this podcast is I'm trying my best to make it a little bit more organic. When I start feeling like I'm too structured or maybe pressuring into something else whenever, we're having fun talking about one subject, we're just going to stay in that subject. We're going to talk about it. We're going to see where it takes us. And then, if we start getting completely off topic, we'll bring ourselves back in a little bit. But it's going to be a fun and a wild, wink, wink, wild ride today because today we are actually going to be talking about the wild, wild west, guys. So America's great and first frontier. But first of all, as with all my guests on this channel, we're going to start with a few icebreakers just for Cody. So I'm gonna ask him just a few questions. So it's just this or that questions. All right, you've done this before on the YouTube channel. Uh-huh. So, all right, chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Vanilla. Okay. Sweet or sour?
Sour.
Steak or chicken?
Ooh.
Tough one, huh?
Chicken.
Chicken. Okay. This is just an inside joke between us because I know that both of us have seen both of these series, One Tree Hill or Heart of Dixie.
Still One Tree Hill.
One Tree Hill takes the cake. All right, and then the most, the question above them all, right? Drums or flats? Talking about chicken wings.
Flats.
Flats.
All the way.
All the way. Okay. I'll go with you on that. I do not discriminate against any chicken wings. I tell everybody that I'll eat drums, flats. If they had a different shape, one, two as well.
Would you prefer one other,
Man, a drum looks more appetizing to me, but I will agree
that
the getting the meat from the flat is a lot easier and almost a lot more satisfying at the end. All right. So now that we're through all that, I just want to go ahead and ask you, what pops in your head when I speak the phrase the Wild West or the Wild Frontier? What first things pop into your head?
Well, the first thing, John Wayne. Westerns. John Wayne, Clint Eastwood. I also think of
Hollywood westerns.
Well, that's one, but I also think of Billy the Kid, Jesse James. After the Civil War, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Union Pacific Railroad, stuff
Railroads.
like
that. Railroads is something I didn't even really think about, but yeah, that was a huge part of that time. I always think of my head just automatically, obviously goes to cowboys and Indians, outlaws, stuff like that. And then Red Dead Redemption.
Oh yeah.
Because, we used to play games all the time. So that's where my head immediately goes. And then obviously one of my favorite westerns is probably Tombstone. So I love Tombstone, a lot of other ones, but those are the first things that pop into my head too. It's just people have different things that pop in their head when they first think of the Wild West, but I think a lot of us mostly go straight to Hollywood westerns, just boom, the movies we've seen, because that's the most.
I mean, I grew up watching.
Yeah, we grew up watching westerns, and that's the most access basically that we've ever had to the Wild West.
Oh God, all right. So can I give a confession?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't know. You want to be careful, but
So for some reason, growing up, did you ever watch Christmas with the Duke? I think it was on AMC or Turner Classic Movies and stuff like that.
I saw parts, but I've never actually sat down to watch it.
All right, so those who don't know what that is, it's basically John Wayne all day on Christmas Day, and for some reason, I'm a big John Wayne fan.
It's a John Wayne marathon.
It's just a John Wayne marathon all day on Christmas. Okay. And so even today, still, I have to watch John Wayne.
Really? So that's
I do not watch A Christmas Story. I do not watch, It's a Wonderful Life. I watch John Wayne. I don't watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
I heard you say that one time. You said, all I want to do...
I just want to sit on the couch.
Sit on the couch and watch John Wayne and eat some good food.
Yep, that's all I want.
Yeah, to each his own, man. Everyone has their own like personal favorite part.
I mean, that's my tradition.
That's your Christmas Day tradition.
That's my Christmas Day tradition.
Cool. So John Wayne's got a big place in your heart.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so going into some like discussion points, I had no idea because it's so, you know, we see it like hundreds of years of material through, or what we think is hundreds of years of material in Hollywood and like what we've seen in the movies and TV shows and whatnot. Apparently the Wild West period only lasted about 30 years. It was about a 30-year period that lasted right after the Civil War. It was like 1865 and then it ended around like 1895. Yeah, like I had no idea it was that short of a period that they consider the Wild West. But yeah, I mean, the Wild West, basically, it was a 30-year period that just packs in like pioneers, cowboys, outlaws, gunslingers, Native American Indians into this place in history that we all know is the Wild West. But when you really start digging into the history of it and you start to understand, there's also like a lot of they played up the Wild West a lot. There's a lot of mythology and storytelling.
It was fantasized big time.
Yeah, super fantasized. Like a lot of like storytelling that goes along with that time period. I kind of want to like dig a little bit deeper into some of this stuff and see what is true and what's false. Like what has been widely misinterpreted or just a Hollywood misconception. So, I mean, I think for me, personally, the 30-year time period was one for me. I had no idea. I mean, no one really sat down and tells you in a movie, like, oh, this is this to this. You see, like, the caption, like
you never think about it. That was only a 30-year
you never think about it.
Period.
And, like, you think because of Hollywood, because it's an endless cycle, you can make a Western about anything, almost. You think that there was, like, you think about it like almost like ancient Greece, where there's, like, hundreds of years of this stuff going on, but it was really a 30-year period. Like, that's insane to me. So, yeah, we looked up, we did some research, we got some websites pulled up, and basically we went to thevintagenews.com, we went to biography.com/the Wild West figures, and we went to the historychannel.com about 10 things you didn't know about the Old West. And we also have another one here. It's going to be the special edition of the Centennial Today magazine, and it's the Haunted West Legendary Tales from the Frontier. So, pretty cool. We got a lot of our information from this research from these sources, and like I said, we're just going to kind of dig a little bit into some of these things that we just had no idea, or at least I didn't. I don't know about you. You might know some things that I didn't know, and I might know some things that you didn't know, but I just think it's wild, dude, that like it was so fantasized. So what are the most famous names that come to mind, like when you think about like the Wild West? Jesse James,
Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, Wild Bill Hickok,
Wild Bill, yeah,
Buffalo Bill,
Doc Holliday, Johnny Ringo. I just named like three people from Tombstone. Sitting Bull.
Yeah, Geronimo.
Gosh, there's so many, dude.
Custard.
Yep, General Custard. Bless his soul. Let's see. I think that let's go over some of the facts about 10 things you didn't know. Basically, oh yeah, I heard you telling a story earlier about feral camels.
Yeah.
So, is that what this is right here?
Yeah.
So what was the deal with that?
So apparently, and I didn't know this until recent, but so apparently there was camels in Texas. So when you think of the Wild West, you think of like horses, cows,
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I would have never thought of camels ever being in the Wild West.
So apparently,
Saudi Arabia.
There was something called the Us Camel Corpse, which was established in 1856 at Camp Verde, Texas. Because, I don't know. The Army imported 66 camels from the Middle East. So this experiment was generally a success, but as the Civil War broke out, the exploration of the frontier was... what does that say? Was curtailed, and the Confederates captured Camp Verde after the war. Most of the camels were sold, but
they were sold to the Ringling Brothers Circus. Some to the Ringling Brothers Circus, others escaped into the wild. Just camels out there. Imagine if you just walked through. You're just walking through the desert. Or you're just riding through the desert. I don't know what you're doing. You might be on a horse, you might not be, and all of a sudden you see a camel. You are gonna think you're hallucinating, right? You're gonna think you're not in your right mind, like unless you knew what was going on. You'd be like, that poor horse. Something's wrong with it.
Back then you have to think about it. Most anybody back then had never seen a camel. So when you walk up and you just see just a wild camel out there, you have no clue what that is. What would you be thinking?
Yeah, I'd be thinking something's wrong. That horse drank something.
Sick.
That horse drank something it wasn't supposed to. So another fun fact: thanks to the Winchester rifle, we know that Billy the Kid was not left-handed. No. And apparently, this was a misconception. People had assumed that the outlaw was left-handed. Because of this tintype photograph shows him with a gun belt on his left side. And so everybody thought that he was left-handed, but most tintype cameras produced a negative image that appeared positive once it developed, meaning the end result was a reverse reality. So the picture was a mirror image, so he was a righty. And when he poses with his Winchester Model 1873 lever-action rifle, the weapon appears to feature a loading gate on the left side, but the Winchester only made 1873s that load on the right side. So, without the knowledge of knowing about this Winchester rifle, people would still think that Billy the Kid was a left-handed. But just so happens he was just an average righty, dude. I thought that was pretty cool. The OK Corral. So the gunfight from one of my favorite westerns ever, which is Tombstone, apparently wasn't much of a shootout and did not even take place at the OK Corral. It was on a corner of two streets or something. It was one of the most famous gunfights in history between the three Earp brothers, Morgan, Virgil, and Wyatt Earp, and Doc Holliday, Billy Claiborne, and two Clanton brothers, Billy and Ike, and the two McLaury brothers, Frank and Tom. It didn't really, nothing crazy happened. They say that it only lasted about 30 seconds, the gunfight. The gunfight was only 30 seconds, guys. And when you're in a heated gunfight, I've never been in one.
I'm sure.
And I'm sure that 30 seconds feels like crazy.
It's eternity.
Because you don't know what's going on. You don't know if you're about to get hit. You got to try to make a calculated decision on who and where you're going to shoot. I think it was just 30 seconds of probably chaos, just people popping shots. And then to go even further than that, the shootout didn't even take place within the OK Corral at all. Instead, the shooting occurred at the intersection of 3rd Street and Fremont Street in Tombstone, Arizona, which is behind the OK Corral. So, but the bloodshed made up for the brevity. So you understand that 3 of the lawmen were injured and 3 of the cowboys and the bad guy gang were actually killed. So I think it's crazy that that cinematic view in Tombstone where that shootout's just bam, bam, bam. And it's probably, I don't know, I've never timed it. I would say it's probably at least 3 or 4 minutes, if not longer. in reality, it only lasted 30 seconds, and that's just hearsay. It could have been shorter than that. It could have been a little bit longer than that, but like people say it was about 30 minutes of gunfire. That is just absolutely wild to me. You got any other like crazy facts?
Let's see here.
Oh, while he's looking at that, I wanted to mention something that popped up on the interesting like 10 things you didn't know about the Wild West. Apparently, Jamestown was not the oldest settlement in the United States. Apparently, this place called Acoma Pueblo is actually like the oldest. It's a Native American settlement. Obviously it predates the European ones that came over. So it was west of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and was continuously occupied since the 12th century. And apparently Acoma still inhabit their Sky City. It's a settlement of about 4,800 people that sits atop a 365-foot high mesa. So hunters and traders and the Acoma people make their income from a cultural center and casino complex now, but I just think it's absolutely wild. Like the oldest state capital in the United States is Santa Fe, which recently celebrated its 400th anniversary. So this place is actually older than that. So very interesting fact, because everyone automatically just from school and even Pocahontas, dude. I mean, you know that like the Indians were here, but like even from Pocahontas and school and stuff, you think you automatically your mind goes, what's the first settlement? Jamestown. So like, and it wasn't even. That's not even accurate. There's so many like misconceptions in the Wild West. You got what you were.
Well, I mean, to build off of that, like, I mean that's Hollywood, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean they fantasize it. I mean it was definitely interesting, but that's what Hollywood does. But speaking of Hollywood and entertainment, I mean, what do you think about entertainment back then in the Wild West?
Like entertainment in the Wild West?
Yeah.
So like they're shooting shows or like actually just hanging out at saloons.
Well,
and like playing card games. And
well,
stuff.
specifically shows.
Shows.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure that I don't know what to think about those. The only thing that I would have any kind of relation to with that is going to like this place in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. It was called Ghost Town, and it did like old Western shows and stuff.
Ghost Town was great.
Yeah, like I don't know though. Like,
well, have you ever heard of the Wild West show?
No.
You've heard of Buffalo Bill?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
That was his show.
That was his show.
So he featured Sitting Bull,
Annie Oakley.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he had all them.
Yeah, the Wild West show. Buffalo Bill had a storied career. He started out as a writer for the Pony Express before he became an Army Scout and a bison hunter.
So this dude used to just go around just hunting buffalo.
Which was interesting because the U.S. government, as far as hunting bison, the U.S. government paid people to hunt bison, and so you had people like Buffalo Bill that would go out there and just shoot the buffalo for their pelts. Wow. And the whole idea of that was to essentially starve out the Native Americans who we were currently at war with.
Yeah. That's brutal tactics.
But so Buffalo Bill, he recognized the amount of interest people had in, like, you know, the fantasy, right? The stories that they heard. So he capitalized on it, and he founded the Buffalo Bill Wild West Show. And the company grew, and he toured all over the U.S. before going over to Europe as well. So he
actually took the show to Europe.
Yeah. So he actually, he you had Annie Oakley, Buffalo Bill himself.
Dude, imagine what like the Europeans thought when he came over there.
Yeah,
and all that. Like that must have been a big deal. I imagine that like they either loved it or thought it was just super weird, but. Yeah, dude. Like, put things in perspective a little bit. The frontier land and everything was everything west of the Mississippi River during the 1800s. So that included Dakotas, like North Dakota, South Dakota, the whole territory, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Colorado. And they were all untamed territories and were known for lawlessness, wild, rowdy, unrestrained, just behavior, people just going crazy. So people would just get in fights in saloons, and it was normal for them to get in a fight in a saloon, take it outside, and someone get shot and killed right then. Like, that's insane, dude. Can you imagine? You imagine going to a bar, or just even a restaurant. You're just having a good old time, and you and someone else just start shooting stuff off, and all of a sudden, y'all like, just take this outside. And it's not like a fist fight. Y'all are going to draw weapons, and one of you is not going to make it back inside the saloon.
But that was normal.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is insane. And it wasn't, like, I mean, it was a long time ago, but it wasn't in the grand scheme of everything. This wasn't very long ago. Like, I just think it's wild, man. It's the Wild West, like, literally. I just think that, you know, this article's talking about a little bit more of how they fantasized it in Hollywood and everything. It says, like, American mythology perpetuated by films, like film legends from Bronco Billy to Clint Eastwood, and everything in between. The lawlessness of the time provided plenty of drama, and the lonely, windswept territories, mountainous and arid, provided the cinematic backdrop that Hollywood needed. So yeah, I think that's pretty crazy. It does say right here, too, ironically, the era that has provided more than 100 years worth of, it's provided already 100 years worth of, like, cinema, but the period itself only lasted 30 years. That just keeps, that's so funny to me. But they're talking about, like, even like the American cowboy was like, what they put on the screen was such a mythical creature, because they said that cowboys naturally were illiterate, hard workers with, like, dirty jobs. They weren't even called cowboys. Instead, they were called cattlemen. They wore one set of clothes until they turned into rags, didn't bathe or brush their teeth, because apparently Americans didn't, or a few Americans at least, didn't even brush their teeth until an ad came out in 1915 that popularized brushing your teeth.
When was the toothbrush invented?
I have no idea. Look that up. That's a fun fact. But it says the truth is nobody wore Clint Eastwood's flat brim cowboy hat. It wasn't practical, and furthermore, it was too expensive.
So, let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of the phrase "getting out of Dodge"?
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard of that. Get out of Dodge!
Yeah.
You gotta get out of Dodge!
So, actually, the well-known expression "get out of Dodge" was used in the popular TV western Gunsmoke. You ever seen Gunsmoke?
I've seen episodes, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But that expression referred to Dodge City, Kansas, which was a well-known hangout for gunslingers in the 1870s. It became so well-known that when big companies needed fighting men to protect their businesses, they would look for them in Dodge. As one resident said, they feared neither God, man, nor the devil, and so reckless they would pit themselves against lightning if they ever ran into it.
Oh my gosh. That's pretty intense. Those dudes are absolutely insane.
Tough man.
Yeah, tough as nails is what it sounds like. Tough as lightning. So going back to some of the individuals a little bit more in depth, I'm going to go ahead and say right now my number one favorite individual from the Wild West, and I never thought of him as someone from the Wild West, but I definitely, he was more of a frontiersman. But that would be Davey Crockett, dude, because he was king of the wild frontier. Yeah, dude, that was such a good movie. It says so right here, this article in the Centennial. One of the first American movies ever made was the 1909 silent film from Davey Crockett. in Hearts United, and audiences have been fascinated with the Tennessee frontiersman ever since, with everyone from Johnny Cash to Billy Bob Thornton portraying him. Crockett Mania peaked in the 1950s with Disney's 5-part miniseries and the subsequent 1-hour series starring Fess Parker and featuring the catchy theme song, The Ballad of Davey Crockett, which you just heard us butcher, but it was good. Soon it seemed every boy in America had to get a coonskin cap, each one sold under license by Disney. So that's pretty cool. That's probably why I liked it, man. I was a huge Disney fan. Coonskin caps were everywhere. Every time we went to the mountains or something, had to get a pair of moccasins and a coonskin cap. And one of my buddies actually got me a nice, it was like a Winchester. It was like a toy Winchester. And man, I just thought I was Davy Crockett. I loved it. But Davy Crockett, a little bit of history on him. You know, being a frontiersman, soldier, politician. He's mythologized folk heroes and forefathers of the Wild West, because they did call him the king of the wild frontier. He got involved in Tennessee's local and state politics, representing as a U.S. congressman in 1827 through 1833, and after barely losing his election to serve out a 4th term, he moved to Texas, and it was under Mexico's jurisdiction at the time, obviously, in 1835. So the following year, he fought for Texas independence and was killed in the Alamo. So the Battle of the Alamo took the life of Davy Crockett, but man, what a life well lived. Oh man, you want to get into Jesse James, huh?
Oh yeah.
Let's get in there. What's it say?
So, like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Jesse James was a celebrated bank and train robber who, along his brother Frank, led the Jesse Younger Gang. The James brothers fought for the Confederate Army during the Civil War and was accused of atrocious crimes against Union soldiers, robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches throughout the Midwest. James gained celebrity status and notoriety starting in 1866. After close 2 decades on the run, James' life of crime came to an end when he was shot by a new gang recruit, Robert Ford, who was promised by authorities to be forgiven of past crimes if he killed Jesse James.
Yeah, so the authorities set him up with this new guy, basically, and he betrayed him and killed him. You ever see that movie with Brad Pitt portrayed him? He actually did a really good job. And Brad Pitt's actually from Jesse James' hometown in Missouri.
Really?
Yeah, they're from the same hometown. Brad Pitt's like, dude, like some interview or something, he was like, dude, we have a lot in common because we're from the same place. I think it's super cool. He thinks it's really cool. I think in this magazine I had something stopped for Jesse James somewhere. Yeah, Brad Pitt has a connection with the outlaw, but I thought this was pretty crazy. On his headstone, it actually says, devoted husband and father, Jesse Woodson James, murdered 1882 by a traitor and coward whose name is not worthy to appear here.
Oh, God.
That's on his headstone, man. That's on his headstone. And also, apparently, there's 2 graves for Jesse James, actually. Because apparently they moved him, but some guy had claimed, he was like 100 years old or something.
I think he was 101.
Yeah, and he had claimed that he was the real Jesse James, so he's actually in one of the graves. But the real Jesse James does lie in, I'm pretty sure, in Missouri, in his hometown. I think, yeah, here it is. After Jesse was murdered, he was buried in the front yard of his farm because they didn't want grave robbers to come mess with him. And as years passed and his enemies died off, he re-entered the Kearney Cemetery by his family. So, yeah, he's in Kearney. But, yeah, right here it says, a man named J. Frank Dalton, who came forward around 1948 at age 101, claimed that he was the real Jesse James, and a court even allowed him to legally adopt the bandit's name. No one knows why Dalton made this claim or if he ever had any link to Jesse James at all. But regardless, DNA showed decades later that James is indeed buried in Kearney. So the grave in Texas holds J. Frank Dalton, who just claimed that he was Jesse James. So there's two graves, but don't be fooled. He's actually in Kearney, Missouri. That's where the real Jesse James lies. R.I.P. So pretty crazy stuff right there. They said that made him larger than life because his body required 2 graves. So that's an interesting fact for sure. What other people you want to talk about, man? We got all kinds of stuff. Oh, this was a fun fact. I had no idea that this guy, his name was Joaquin Murrieta, and apparently he was known as the Robin Hood of the West. And this bandit is said to have been the inspiration for Zorro. So that's pretty cool. I don't know. I've never heard much about him, but I've also never really watched too many of the original Zorro movies either. So I wouldn't really know, but they say that like the Zorro story was first told in 1919. But apparently this guy, the Rangers killed him. They cut off his head and pickled it in a jar and charged people $1 each to view it in a traveling show.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I don't know, man. That is insane. Apparently, he was known as the Robin Hood of the West, but it's shrouded in all kind of mystery because they said that Marietta avenged the brutal rape and murder of his wife and the hanging of his brother on false charges by becoming an outlaw, robbing stages and killing people who crossed him and confiscated his gold claim. So that's when, I guess, they had a $1,000 reward to track him down and kill him, and the Rangers found him. They cut off his head, and then they charged people $1 to view his head, dude. That is sick. That's insane. That's no wonder that story is in the Haunted West, Legendary Tales from the Frontier. It deserves to be in there. Who else you got, man?
So, have you ever heard of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
Yeah, Sundance Kid.
Oh,
he's not the Sundance Kid. There's 2 of them, right? Butch Cassidy and
the Sundance Kid. Yeah. Have you ever seen that movie with Paul Newman?
Mm-mm.
Great movie. But Robert Leroy Parker, better known as Butch Cassidy, closed out the last decade of the 1800s being a wanted man with his accomplice Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, a.k.a. the Sundance Kid. The 2 robbed trains, banks, and led a posse of criminals called the Wild Bunch. Cassidy and the Wild Bunch wreaked havoc in places like Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, and New Mexico before fleeing the country to evade law enforcement. To make a clean escape, Cassidy and the Sundance Kid took a flight from New York City to South America. In 1908, they got involved in a shootout with local authorities in Bolivia, and it's believed that the 2 men lost their lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they died in Bolivia.
They died in Bolivia.
That's insane. Like, they did all that stuff here and they died in Bolivia. Okay.
Yeah, they got away.
On the run.
Yeah,
So they died on the run.
On the run.
Alright, so I think we need to definitely shout out a little bit more to Miss Annie Oakley. She was known as Little Miss Sure Shot. And apparently somebody told me that nickname, Little Miss Sure Shot, was actually given to her by Sitting Bull.
Really?
That's what someone said. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but that's what I heard or read. Maybe I read it in here. Let's see. Yeah. So impressed with her rifle skills and character, Sitting Bull gave her $65 to pose with him for a photograph to start a close friendship. Sitting Bull nicknamed her Little Sure Shot, gifted her the moccasins he wore at the Battle of Little Bighorn, and called her his unofficial adopted daughter. Oakley would fondly recall that Sitting Bull made a great pet of me, is what she said. That's funny. She lived an extraordinary life, though. She had champion sharpshooting skills, started in her teens. At age 15, her talents came out to full view when she dared to compete with expert marksman Frank E. Butler. She narrowly beat him in the shooting contest and eventually... she married the guy. She met Buffalo Bill and became one of his star attractions in the Wild West show that we talked about earlier, where she'd have the opportunity to meet royalty, world leaders, and even befriend Chief Sitting Bull. So, up to her death, she was setting records in shooting contests and preparing for a comeback, apparently. She died in 1926. Her husband of 5 decades was so devastated that he followed her to the grave just weeks later. I mean, he's probably pretty old by then too. Goodness gracious, that's pretty cool though. See that stuff about Butch Cassidy you were just talking about. Wyatt Earp, I'll let you cover him, and then I want to talk about the Doc.
Oh, yeah, you love the Doc, don't you?
I love Doc, man. Doc Holliday. Dude, that's the shirt I should have wore. Guys, if you don't know already, I also film these podcasts on my YouTube channel, and there's a playlist at Gavin Lamb TV you can go to. It's just the podcast. It's going to have a new name now, I guess. It's going to be under Listen to LambChop. So go check that out if you want to watch the podcast. It's not too entertaining. It's just us sitting here doing this. But if you like to see how we do it, go check it out.
All right, Wyatt Earp. So Wyatt Earp was a complicated frontiersman who lived many lives, both savory and unsavory. Not only was he a businessman, a brothel bouncer, and gambler. But he also had a few run-ins with the law before he decided to become the law. After moving from one boomtown to the next in search of easy money, he found himself in Dodge City.
Oh, it's dangerous.
Kansas, as a assistant marshal, where he would spend his days maintaining the peace and doing his fair share of gambling.
It's a danger zone, dude.
In 1879, he and several of his brothers moved to Tombstone, Arizona territory, hoping to get rich from the silver boom. While there, they found trouble waiting for them, a group of outlaws called the Cowboys. Soon, the Earps, along with a friend, Doc Holliday, would become legendary for their shootout with the Cowboys at the OK Corral in 1881, or, as we learned earlier, behind the OK Corral.
Behind the OK Corral. It only took 30 seconds, but it was epic nonetheless. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I love how it says the outlaws called the Cowboys. Those darn Cowboys, they're back at it again. So they mentioned they were running with Doc Holliday. So Doc Holliday is probably my second favorite, if not a tie with Davey Crockett, my second favorite character from the Wild West and from, obviously, the story Tombstone and everything. So John Henry Doc Holliday was born and raised in Georgia. I also love that about him. He's a Georgia boy. We're Georgia boys. It's just we're relatable already. Before he became a professional gambler and gunslinger out west, he became a dentist who built his career in Atlanta. Having caught tuberculosis from his ailing mother, Holliday decided to move to the Southwest in hopes that a drier climate would ease his symptoms. Like Wyatt Earp, Holliday was a drifter and a risk-taker. Realizing playing poker was more lucrative than dentistry, he became a gambler and traveled westward to Texas, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. It was in Texas where he met Earp, and the two became lifelong friends. Holliday would eventually follow Earp to Tombstone, Arizona, and fight side by side with him at the OK Corral. Behind the OK Corral. At 36, Holliday succumbed to tuberculosis in Colorado and passed away. So, lived an epic life. One of my favorite lines from that entire movie is, "I'll be your Huckleberry." He was
that or pardon me if I don't shake hands.
Yeah, pardon me if I don't shake hands. There's something back here in this in the magazine about him as well, if I can find it. I thought it was pretty cool. Put it on there. Well, I can't find it. But apparently they say that Johnny Ringo basically was found by a tree dead, and they say that it could have been suicide, but it could have been this guy named Frank, and it also could have been Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday, because they were after him at the time, and they were the new sheriffs in town, basically. So.
Was this after Wyatt Earp's brother was shot in the OK Corral?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like right after. Before we wrap it up, Cody wants to talk a little bit about the railroads and the Oregon Trail here. So, what you got for us?
So the Oregon Trail, it was actually created by trappers in the early 1800s, but by the 1840s, it was being used to transport large groups of settlers across the country. The Oregon Trail diverged with another route leading to Santa Fe. Some historians estimate that between the 300 and 400,000 Americans used the Oregon Trail and Santa Fe trails between 1840 and 1868. So that was a big.
Gracious.
That was big, but of course the Oregon Trail was dangerous. Attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, people just lying and
Right,
waiting for people to rob them because they knew they'd be coming through.
Wagon trains or very large groups of wagons traveling together could face a variety of issues. These included running out of food, having trouble crossing rivers, encountering bad weather and illness. However, the trail still remained in the frequent use from the 1840s well into the 1860s. With the development of the railroads in the 1860s, people took advantage of that. It was a lot faster, a lot easier, a lot safer. In 1869, the first American Transcontinental Railroad was completed. This line linked the American West to the Eastern Coast. Since the majority of finished goods and products on the East Coast, the people in the West had easier access, to food, steel, stuff like that. Before finishing the Transcontinental line, however, many smaller railroad lines had already dotted across America. So, with the improving technologies and added safety features, railroads became the preferred method of transportation for many settlers heading west.
Huh. Interesting. Also, guys, right here it says, just for anyone that's curious, anyone that's an NFL fan or something, talking about the gold rush in 1848, and people started to rush in, pouring into California to get rich. They were often traveling by boat or covered wagon, and these people were called the 49ers because they arrived in 1849. So that's actually where the San Francisco 49ers got their name. So it's a fun fact about the NFL and football, if you're interested. But guys, we are actually about to wrap this thing up. Like I said, we've just scratched the surface on all this stuff, and we're trying to be more prepared and be more do our research and not have to sit here and read so much of it to you, but at the same time, so much information is packed in, all these articles and everything. It's absolutely insane. But I think that we covered almost all of it. We talked about Davey Crockett, Billy the Kid. We talked about Nat Love. We talked about Tombstone. We talked about John Wayne. We talked about a bunch of them. What's his name? Clint Eastwood.
Mm-hmm.
Good, Bad, and the Ugly. So let's see. Let's just go over some of the other. All accuracies and facts aside, let's talk just a little bit about the Wild West that we know more about, and that's obviously the Wild West that we fantasized about in Hollywood. It's delivered some of the most epic westerns in cinematic history. And, what are our favorite westerns? For me, it's Tombstone, Dances with Wolves, Open Range, The Magnificent Seven, both versions. the Pale Rider, True Grit, and the Good, Bad, and the Ugly. So what are for you? Any of those two?
Well, yeah. As far as those, Pale Rider is amazing. True Grit, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. I like Tombstone, but you love Tombstone.
I like it. I mean, I do. It's not my favorite, but I do like it a lot. I had an interactive map of the shootout and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Back it came with the DVD special and all that. And I used to watch it over and over with that map and play with my GI Joes and stuff and reenact the shootout while it happened on the screen. I just have a really strong connection to that one. It's really fun.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I love John Wayne. I love Clint Eastwood's westerns too. So I love stuff like Rio Bravo, El Dorado, Red River, The Searchers, McClintock. And as far as Clint Eastwood, I love, obviously the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is actually is actually a trilogy. Did you know that?
The Good, Bad, and the Ugly is?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
It's a part of a fistful of dollars for a few dollars more, and the Good, and Bad, and the Ugly.
Huh.
And I love all three of those.
I've heard of all those, but I didn't know they were all supposed to be together. I mean, I knew it was Clint Eastwood.
It's a trilogy about the man with no name.
Oh.
Because you never know his name.
What about the horse with no name? Been through the desert on a horse with no name.
It felt good to get out of the rain.
America. Literally.
Man.
But yeah, so I think we went over Wild Bill, Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Jesse James, and one of my favorites is actually Woody.
From Toy Story?
Yeah, dude, Sheriff Woody. He was awesome. I think he was probably one of the best Western characters out there. He had debatably some of the best movies that been made for, so pretty cool. Also, let's see. We went over that Billy the Kid was not left-handed; he was righty. Tombstone, the movie, plays up the shooting at the OK Corral to be more than it actually was. The first U.S. settlement was not Jamestown. We went over some Native American leaders, famous black cowboy, drinking and riding with Billy the Kid. We went into depth. We even looked a little bit at Jesse James' headstone. A little bit about how the Wild West has always been known for its legendary ghost stories. That might be a podcast in and of itself. So how Hollywood portrayed it and how it actually was. We went over a little bit of that as well. One more talking point, just because we have it here for sure, is the video games. And there's really only ever been 2 games that have really done Westerns right, in my opinion. And that's PlayStation 2's game called Gun, and then the Red Dead Redemption series and family, the whole collection of Red Dead, going back to Red Dead Revolver, Red Dead Redemption, and Red Dead Redemption 2, I think is the most beautiful one of all of those. But Gun was set in the American Old West in Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, and New Mexico in 1880. And it includes some of the Badlands in it as well, and Dodge City, Kansas. That's an open world, it's an RPG. Includes side missions and stuff like that. But while traveling town to town, bandits attack and everything, and you actually can go and you can hunt buffalo, and you can get wild horses, farm animals and stuff, and you act as a gunslinger, and you can choose whether or not you want to be good or bad, basically, and you have a reputation against resistance fighters like lawmen, renegade soldiers, and vengeful Apaches and Blackfoot tribes. So pretty cool. Red Dead Redemption was also super fun. And it's also a third-person perspective RPG game. Basically, it emphasizes a gunslinger gameplay mechanic called Deadeye, and it slows everything down while you get to shoot the revolvers and everything. It's really cool, really fun game. It was absolutely beautiful and amazing. The story was epic, and the gameplay was better than I could have imagined for Red Dead Redemption 2. Very realistic, and it's almost like going into a time machine, and you're able to interact with everything and everyone and make choices, and all your actions have consequences based on how you play the game. But it's very accurate and historic to the point where you get sucked into playing for hours and hours, like just almost any video game. And it's scary how it sucks up much of like a lot of your life, but you spend a lot of time inside a virtual Western world. But it's amazing. You don't want to leave it. How did you like? Did you ever play Gun?
I never played Gun.
What about you played? You never played Red Dead Revolver either, right? Just the two.
No, just Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2.
What do you think about those games?
I love those games.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very accurate.
I can sit there and play cards all day in that game.
Yeah, you just go into a virtual world and play poker.
I had never played poker, never knew how to play poker until Red Dead Redemption.
Go into a video game as a cowboy and learn how to play poker. You can't say that unless we have games like Red Dead Redemption. You literally can't do it. I think we're about to wrap it up, though. This has definitely, absolutely been a blast from the past, and it's definitely been wild. It was awesome and fun doing research and having a discussion on the Wild West and America's Great Frontier. I learned a lot while doing this research and a lot just sitting here doing this as well. And my hope for this podcast is maybe you learn something neat while we talk about it, and hopefully that some of it's entertaining too, because that's the whole point of this. So we want to be entertaining, we want to be informative, and we want to have fun. So we had fun. Cody, did you have fun?
Yeah, blast.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun sitting down, reliving some facts and just learning together. That's what it's all about, especially in this time more than ever where everyone's social distance. If you can just sit down with one individual and start going through some books and you can learn something fun and interesting, you got to do it. So please come on, check out the channel, and I just it's time to call it. But thank you so much for listening and tuning in to the first official episode of Listening to LambChop. Please go check out and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Gavin Lamb TV and hit that subscribe button for me, please. I need subscribers. I would absolutely love to have you, and we're always doing something fun on the channel. So, guys, as always, much love. Faith moves mountains. Peace out. Signing off. It's Gavin Lamb.